we've invited one of our agents to come on and share his tips and tricks because he has had such great success over the last, year and a half. So Bryan, I don't know if you just want to take it away and maybe share a little bit with us.
Well, sure. Well, thank you for that wonderful intro there. That's awfully flattering, and I'm very blessed that you guys have asked me to share just some of my processes of how I'm dealing with internet leads. It's been um, I have been happy with the process that I've used. Majority of just what Keller Williams and everybody has taught me of how to kind of process those things in general, and just kind of threw my own little flavor on it. So hopefully it helps you guys a little bit. I'm very simple, break it down to an easy way to remember how to do the process. So hopefully it can help you guys moving forward. Just a little bit with me, it's been roughly 10 deals that I've had within the first year and a half that have all been internet leads, meaning I didn't know anything about them, never met them before, just strictly got them off a lead. The majority of our leads are coming from Realtor.com, which I hate to admit, but that's the truth. The one big one that stands out probably to everybody is I did have a $1.1 million deal closed with a strictly Realtor.com lead, which was, I learned so much. I learned so much. It was an amazing situation. So, but I learned a lot from that process and how to kind of understand people, because this is a people business, obviously. So, so that's a little bit about me. What I'll do is I'll go through the process a little bit, and then hopefully if anybody's have any questions at the end, I'll be glad to answer anything that I can. My process kind of begins with the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. That kind of begins the conversation. So within the first 45 seconds of a phone call that you're calling a stranger, you're going to answer some questions immediately and also establish a purpose of your phone call. I'm not a huge script guy, but I do use them as a base of the conversation. So I don't read anything. I think that just comes off as a telemarketer. I know everybody is getting these extended warranty program calls and nobody wants to extend their car warranty, but you're getting calls of that. At least I do, probably once a week, if not more. So it's kind of, you don't want to hit that mark within the first couple of seconds of your phone call. And if I call somebody and say, "Hi, it's Bryan, how are you?" Immediately you're set into a telemarketer mindset for that person. So I focus on not going there. You try to make it as comfortable as you can. But you just got to hit it. Hit who are you? What are you calling for? Where are we talking about? What is it that we're talking about? And why? Why am I calling you? Why would you want me as your realtor? So, to start with the who, I always Google the person's name, especially you're going to see some names that are unique that you might not say on a day-to-day basis. So I Google it and I'll practice it. One that comes up to my mind hit is recently is Farhaya, which was a name I've never said before, never read before, but I just Googled it, said it a couple times before I called, and I nailed it. And that leaves an impression. You can hear it in their voice. They go, "Yes," and it was good. And we ended up closing a deal together. So Google the name, understand it, especially if it's kind of a unique name, just so you kind of understand it. On top of who you express who you are right away. Don't beat around the bush. I mean, I know scripts kind of go the other direction, but I just come out and say it right away. "Hey, Fahaya, I'm Bryan Wharton. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams. The reason I'm calling you today." Right off the bat. No subtleties, no beating around the bush, just flat out come out and say why you're calling. And what is the reason for your call? "Hey, I've got a notification here from Realtor.com. I work close with Realtor.com and they've advised me," it's another way of saying it, that you have interest in ABC, Main Street. And again, this all comes within 45 seconds of the initial ring, 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 and they answer. So where obviously kind of know your market, obviously. Don't kill them with jargon and data, but just understand how the markets, you all do. Everybody, you all do. You are smart, beautiful people. So you know what the market is. You know that neighborhood. You know what some data is for lending. Just sprinkle a little bit in there so they kind of understand that you know what you're talking about. Establishes validity, and that you know what you're talking about. When that particularly kind of leads to, when can you see the home? When can I get you into the home to see it? Don't be afraid to just ask that. Just be blunt. Once you kind of establish who you are, why you're calling, and where this is at, just say, when can I get you in there to see it? I can set up a showing for you. Just ask. It was kind of, it was funny because when I first started calling people, you're almost scared to just ask for their business. Don't be. And then the why obviously is why are you calling? Why would they want you to represent them in the deal? And all of you, I'm sure, know how to express that to somebody thoroughly. The next step that I go after I kind of hit those, again, those are within the first couple of seconds, first 30 to 45 seconds of a phone call. You hit all of those. With that, this one's kind of hard to explain. My step 2 is what I call the flow of the conversation. It's kind of hard to express. It's kind of hard to label, to get it out. Is you've got to be able to, play jazz. You've got to have a feeling for how this person's going to talk. Keller Williams talks a lot about matching. I remember in Bold, you talk about matching their tone, matching their speed. Do they talk really quick? Do they like to get a lot of information out really quick? Or are they kind of slow and they just kind of, what was that again? Who are you? So you got to kind of understand that and just kind of, it's hard to label that, but you just kind of feel it out, understand the flow of how this conversation is going to go back and forth. Do they know terminology? Do they know what MLS means? Do they know what, supply and demand of the market is? Do they understand, the process of purchasing a home? Are they pre-approved? This is kind of where you figure out, are they pre-approved yet? Have they been looking before? Have they ever bought a home before? All of that has to kind of come within the conversation. You don't want to force that, because I feel like you start to pressure people and they're like, oh, this guy's trying to sell me something. This guy's trying to come at me and make me do anything. No, I'm just trying to understand where you're at. So that's why you kind of slide those in there within the natural flow of the conversation. So get a feel of who they are, if you will. And the big one for me with this one is, and I'll use the example of my $1.1 million deal, is who's going to drive, is how I label it. Who's going to drive that conversation? And I know you've all had those conversations with people where they want to talk and they want to say, here's what I want, here's how it's going to be done. And you've got to recognize that quickly within a conversation to say, okay, and just let them talk. Silence can be important. Let them understand, let me dictate to you how I want this to go. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's how that big deal for me happened, is when I called a person, I came in with my basic kind of standard process, and she immediately took over and wanted to drive and said, well, I want to see all these houses. And you're like, okay, I'll set that up and get it all organized for you and shoot you an email with an agenda, basically. And she was like, great. And then other people are like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in this. I'm just looking. So you got to kind of take the reins, if you will, and take over. So that's a big little tip there, is figure out who's going to drive that conversation and how they drive the process. After that, I can go into, those are kind of when you actually get somebody on the phone. When you don't, I have found some success in texting. If I make a phone call and they either don't answer or they can't talk right now, they're at work, I just send a text. And it's basically kind of the 5 W's of the text. It's a little less formatted. It's a little more fun, if you will. Like you throw emojis in there, throw a waving hand and a smiley face, and you kind of make it a little more loose, a little more friendly, if you will. Like it's like you're texting a buddy. You just kind of make it a little less formal. Um, and it doesn't work every time, but I've gotten a lot of responses from that. And then eventually that leads to a phone call. So just because they don't answer the first call or even maybe the second call, don't be afraid to send a text in there. And I've gotten some responses to text messages. So I don't do it at first. I always try to call first because a voice to voice is better in my opinion, but texting has been effective. And last, and probably just as important of all this for me is how to deal with rejection. As I'm sure most of you understand, that's a big part of internet leads or mojo dialing or any of that stuff is how do I interpret somebody that doesn't want to work with me? Or I've been cursed off the phone before too. So it's a part of this process. So Keller Williams is really great in my training is don't take it personal. You know, that comes up a lot in training, and it's not you, it's just the situation. And it's easy to say that, but it's difficult to realize that. And it's just going to come with some time, honestly. You don't have to defend yourself. You know, you're doing your job. You're going to help people this way. I know it's a cold call or a call out of anywhere, out of nowhere, but you're doing your job. You're going to help people. And some people don't like it. You don't have to go into, oh, well, I'm just doing my job. And I hope I'm just apologize and hang up and move on and move on. So you're going to get those more than you'll get successes. And I think the way that I've trained myself and my brain is it's kind of like the price to pay. It's, in order for me to land a big mega deal like that, I had to get told no and cussed out on the phone 50 something times before I landed one deal like that. And that helps me understand, like, okay, it's just a part of it. So that's kind of my little way of dealing with the same. This is my price I got to pay, that I'll have 2 weeks of being hung up on or told, who are you? Why are you calling? No. So it just helps justify that process for me. So guys, that's my notes that I have here. It's super simple. But hopefully within there's some helpful tips for everybody. But questions, please. Anybody got any questions? Feel free to ask, please.
I've got a question, Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? Was I did Realtor.com leads for a little bit, and I ran into a lot of people who were like, "Well, I kind of have an agent."
Mm-hmm.
But they're not signed with anybody. How do you convert them to agree to work with you exclusively?
That's a great question. And I see that often. Typically, the kind of spiel, if you will, that I go into right away is you do got to find out if they've signed a buyer's commitment with somebody. And actually, it's funny you bring that up because my big deal, that was one of the first things she says. And I almost think they're kind of like, vetting you for a second. They're trying to see, are you the real deal? Are you just going to give up and move on? Typically what I go to is like, oh, I certainly understand, Mrs. Buyer. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I just got the notification from Realtor.com. Wanted to make sure that all your questions are being answered and make sure that you're getting the information you need to make a decision. And it was funny because the big deal that I was literally sitting here talking to her, she said that, and I said that exact thing. I don't want to step anybody's toes. That's not how I operate. That's not how I do my business. But I just want to make sure that you're getting all of your questions answered and that if there's any information I can help with. She kind of hesitated, almost like she wasn't expecting that from me, or either I was going to hang up or try to say, oh, that agent stinks, or whatever. She's just like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, just let me know if there's something I can do to help. She's like, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. Could you schedule some showings for me? And it was just, I'm not sure how her decision process happened through that, but it was just by being honest. I know none of you want to steal people from other people. You know how hard it is for buyers and buyers agents, but just be honest about it. I'm here right now. Can I help you? I'm not trying to steal you away from somebody, but I have you on the phone. What can I do for you? Use me as a resource. So that's kind of how I've gotten around that.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps. Sometimes it
No, it does.
you got to realize when to pull the cord too. If they're just like, oh, well, and they start naming them by name in the brokerage, and I've been working with such and such for 6 months. You're like, okay, well, best of luck. If I can help, let me know. If you need another opinion, let me know. And you just kind of move on to the next. Yep.
Cool.
Good question.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Anybody else got any questions or?
Hi, Ms. Tonda. How often do you get the buyer's agreement signed, or how do you do that? What's your process with that?
That's probably one thing I could do. Oh, hi. Thank you for your question. Good question. It's one thing that I could probably do more. I initially don't worry about the buyer's agreement until at least I meet them. The first step for me is I need to meet this person. It used to be shake their hand and smile and look them in the eye. Now it's elbow bump and nod and hand a card. But for me, getting that initial physical face-to-face is the point of working the leads. And then if we get into, if you can get that process rolling, then you can get that commitment. But I've closed a lot of them without it, because most of the time when I present it, it scares them a little bit, unless they've dealt with it before and they know what's going on. And I'm not saying I never use them, because they're very helpful, but it's something that you got to feel the person out for. For me personally, if I come with them with an information sheet and I give them their rights, the consumer rights, and they're kind of like hesitant, they have a folder and they're kind of like, whoa, then you kind of understand they're a little intimidated by committing to just you. So it's kind of a feel out for me. Most of like the first time homeowners and the younger client is a little intimidated by that. Whereas maybe somebody that's a little seasoned understand that you're committing to them, and it's a great tool.
Thank you. That also leads me to the meeting. What do you use to get to the meeting?
I'm sorry, you broke up. What was that? To the meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Like meeting them, you mean first time?
Yes.
For me, and I know this doesn't work for everybody, but for me, I've been meeting them at the house they'd like to see. That's just, I want to get them to their objective as quick as possible. And I realize that might be the best move for everybody in terms of safety and making sure they're vetted as an appropriate buyer. But I just want to personally be there and get in front of them so they can see, have eye contact and talk to them. I have met people in the office. I think that's a very impressive way to meet people at first. I've done that several times. And we kind of just sit down and talk about goals. I give them all of their rights and the paperwork, and that's worked as well too. So my go-to is just, I need to get them there as quick as we can, especially in this market, because we need to get a deal on the table as soon as possible. I don't have 3 days to meet you, talk to you, send you some paperwork, and then go see the house. I haven't been doing that recently. What I've been doing is, I'll meet you over there at this time. What time can you be there? And I realize that's not ideal, but what the market is, these homes last in 2 or 3 days, we need to get cooking.
I have something to add there. We've added a neat feature in the office. If you do choose to have a meeting in here, we now have mini computers on the back of both of our big screens. So one in the conference room and one in the training room. So if you meet your client in the office in the conference room, you can use the television as your computer. So if you have like a presentation or anything in your email, or if you want to pull up the MLS and have them build their dream home right there with you, you can do that now. There's a keyboard. You just turn it on and it just functions just like a computer. Kind of
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah. What other questions do y'all have for Bryan? Your dog in the background is awesome.
Maggie, what are you doing?
Dylan.
She's 11.
Aww.
So she's our Iron Lady, as we call her.
A question.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
What are you saying?
Oh,
I'm telling you, this technology. How do you in this market right now handle talking to buyers and explaining to them that you're in a hurry now? Because 6 months to a year ago it was like, okay, we can see it tomorrow, maybe this weekend, and now all of a sudden you're like, no, we need to go like tomorrow. And this is a person that just entered the market to see homes, and they're like, whoa, don't push me, I'm not ready to go see that. Like, how are you handling that switch, that like sense of urgency without making them feel like you're like,
yeah. That's
you're
a great
desperate?
question. It's a great question. I think that comes in with the flow of what I'm talking about is you got to be relaxed, confident, and strong in that conversation. So you've got to express to them, listen, here's how the market's moving right now. And have a little data for them. Don't bombard them with stats and data, because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't understand. But just advise them like, hey, the market's moving really, really fast. We've got to be aggressive, is what I typically say. And just say, hey, if you're really interested and you like it, we've got to move fast, because these things aren't lasting past a week, depending on the price point, obviously, of what you're talking about. And that's a good question. It makes me think it depends on the level. It depends where you're at. If you're at that 250 and under range, you've got to express to them that we don't have a lot of time. But once you get above, the 300s and above, it kind of cools down a little bit. It doesn't go as fast. So those people tend to drive more of the conversation. Once you get in the higher ranges, they want to drive because they know, and you're just there to kind of help. Whereas the 250 and under, so you need to drive, explain to them how the market's moving. Do you ask them, are you pre-approved? Because if you love this home and you're not pre-approved, it don't matter. We don't have time for you to get pre-approved. You see, it's just kind of being honest, and how you deliver that depends on the person. It's, I know that's not a great way to define it, but you've got to read the person. Some people need that kick in the butt, and some people need that kind of, come on, here you get a little tap, and just say, hey, here's how we get to it. And some people are like, hey, we got to do this to get it. If you want to get it, we got to do this. So I don't know how to define that for you. It's kind of a feeling that you have to have when you're talking to somebody on the phone and getting into that flow, understanding what makes them tick a little bit.
So it comes back to just like what you said, like matching their speed, and letting either them drive the conversation or you drive the conversation, but
right,
you're just there to consult them and help them and answer their questions. And
absolutely,
I like that, match their speed.
Yeah, and It's not an easy thing to do, especially if you're not a slow talker, and you've got to show restraint on how you talk. It's challenging because I also can't go really fast all the time either, because then I start to slur words and it kind of comes off kind of weird. It's a challenge, and I practice a lot. Like I'm sure my wife gives me these weird looks all the time when I'm in here, like, and I talk with my hands, so it's kind of like, as she stands outside my office, she's like, "What the heck is that guy doing?" But just kind of practice it. Like when you go into that who, and you're Googling their name and you're understanding, and hey, hey Fahaya, this is Bryan with, and just kind of practice it, kind of get to understand a little bit. It sounds funny, but it's helpful.
Does anyone else have any questions? Because I'll just keep throwing a bunch out.
One, Bryan, how many times do you follow up with a lead before you consider it dead?
I give at least 3 phone calls, probably 3 phone calls and a text at least. So that's probably over at least 2 or 3 days. You're going to have a good idea, especially if the mailbox is full. It rings, 8 times. You get to the mailbox full. You probably have a dead number, most likely. Sometimes there'll be an email on there, so you could send an email. I haven't found much success with emails. I'll just be honest, but I'd say after 3 rings and they haven't answered, now you're just bugging them.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically for like Realtor.com and Zillow, how do you handle when you get them on the phone and like 5 other agents are calling them at the same time?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I probably lean back on the just trying to be innocent, like, oh, well, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here. I just want to make sure you're getting your information. Once you kind of get by that though, and they're like, oh, okay, then you can explain how Realtor and Zillow works. Like I've actually opened up a lot of conversations by indicating, okay, well, I just want to give you heads up. By the way, Realtor.com and Zillow have nothing to do with your actual transaction, that they are selling your information to people like me. And then I always go into like, we kind of love and hate them because, I get to meet great people like you. However, I also have a lot of clients that get very upset because they're getting 18 different people calling them. And they go, and most of them have no clue that that's how that goes. So you're educating them without wanting anything from them. And that kind of, I almost like that question because it almost kind of loosens the phone call, if you will, right away. Because they're like, oh, and I just shared a secret with you. You know what I mean? Like I just kind of broke the ice by saying, oh, by the way, I got your information from them. And just and I always say, well, be careful with them. By the way, I have an app that I can send you that won't sell your information if you find that. A lot of my clients love this app because you can, and I go into selling that. You can drive around the neighborhood that you might not know, pull up the app, and it shows you homes for sale around you. Plus, the great thing about that app is it doesn't sell your information to other people. So you kind of bleed that into that as well. Good question.
Love that. About the app.
Question. Yeah, that's where you break the ice of how you got their information in the first place, and just be honest with them. And most of them appreciate that. Most people appreciate your honesty in that situation.
So Bryan, I used to have Boomtown, and it would track when somebody jumps on your website. And sometimes you would call and be like, hey, I see you're looking at houses right now.
Creepy.
Creep.
What? Is she in my window?
Right? Yeah, technology can be grand, but it can also creep people out.
Yeah.
Funny.
I could see that being a little creepy.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like those emails that when you do the Flex MLS search for people and it sends you the email that they opened it, and then you call them like, hey, what do you think about this house? And they're like, I was just looking at that. What are you talking about? And you're like, I just thought it matched your wants and needs.
Right? I just knew you'd like this one. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's a good one. That's a good one.
So the next best thing to do after talking to a client and hopefully maybe getting them on your KW app, because obviously it doesn't sell their information. It's much more private.
Yeah.
Next thing you want to do is probably, Bryan, you would say you set them up on an auto search. So now that you get their criteria and everything, like.
Great question. Great question. If you realize either the home that they sent you is in contract, so that happens a lot. That's a great question, is you'll get a lead from, let's say, Realtor.com, and they didn't realize what contingent means. They have no clue what that means. For me personally, what I do is I start the process the same. And I almost kind of act like I don't know it's in contract. And I go, well, let me look this up for you. Let's get into some details of this property. And then say, this one looks like the seller has accepted a contract, an offer that was been submitted. And most of the time, it's almost a dead end to the conversation. But you go, well, wait a minute, what was it about this house that really piqued your interest? As long as they don't say, oh, it was just cheap. Okay, well, that's a hard thing to bounce back from. But if they go, oh, well, I really like the neighborhood and I'm looking for 3 bedrooms and 1,900 square feet, you can say, oh, well, here's what I can do for you. Why don't we work together? I'll build a search for you. And I say that all the time. I'll build a search for you through the Columbus Board of Realtors database. And then I explain, because everybody's like, well, what's that? Don't say MLS, because nobody knows what that is unless you're in the business, excuse me. So I indicate to them, I'll build a search for them that's going to send them a list of every listing that hits the market that matches that data that they're looking for. So, and just tell them that. Say, it'll email you once a day with every home that matches what you're looking for. And then from there, you just let me know what you're interested in seeing. And the great thing about this search is you don't have to lift a finger. It comes right to your email every morning. You look through a list of things that match that data and tell me if you like one, and I'll set up a showing for you. And the great thing is we'll know the day it hits the market. That's where you go into how fast the market's moving. But because it's moving so fast, if I set you up a search with the Columbus Board of Realtors database, which every licensed professional has to enter their listing information into, where Zillow and Realtor and Trulia are getting their information from, I can just send it to you right away before Realtor even knows about it. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. And then you set them up on a search. Great question. That's if that first initial home, for whatever reason you're calling for, is not available.
Last one, and then I'm done. Sorry,
You're fine. Great. These are really good questions.
How do you handle when you get a client or a potential buyer on the phone and they say, are you the listing agent? They only want to deal with the listing agent. I don't want to talk to you. I want the listing agent.
Great question. And I had one of these on Thursday. It was an older client. So she's been around a little bit, not her first rodeo. And I called her and she's like, oh, don't worry, honey. I knew right away. She called me dear and honey. And I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, I've already talked to a listing agent. I'm going to go see it with her. And I kind of said, oh, okay, well, you don't have a buyer's agent to represent you in that deal and to negotiate on your behalf. And she goes, no, like I said, I already talked to her. I don't need anybody. I said, well, just a moment. Let me hopefully, I want to try to explain this process a little bit to you. I need you to understand that the listing agent's interest is the seller. Her fiducial duties is to the seller. So if you're going to use the listing agent to represent you, she's not going to have your best interest in need. She doesn't have to. Her duty is to the seller. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, it's her listing. Her only responsibility is to list a home and meet the seller's needs as to the best that she can. She's not going to represent you in a negotiation against herself. She goes, oh. And I go, no, I can help you in that transaction, and she is going to pay me to do so. And she goes, huh? Yeah, because she didn't quite understand. I said, well, when you have two agents within a transaction, the listing agent's going to split their commission with the buying agent because I am bringing them a willing and able buyer. So you don't owe me a dime. And she goes, that sounds great. And we went over and looked at a house together, and we're working on a contract. But that's a really good question because it literally just happened to me last week. Hopefully that helps. I mean, that was just explain the process to them, because they're not going to understand that listing agent has no fiduciary duties to them as the buyer, zero. But that listing agent ain't going to say no. They're not going to say, oh, I can't help you, I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. So just help them understand how that process works.
I love it.
Great questions.
Anything else?
Questions from
Brian?
anybody? Was this
Oh, we got-
helpful for anybody? Yeah.
Hi, I have just a quick question. Something totally different. Okay, so I had a really good friend of mine. They're talking about listing their house soon, and they want me to help them with the buying side. But they were like, so we think we know what's going on. We think we know how to sell because it's pretty easy, right? And she's like, I just don't know, because they want to look for land. They're like, I don't know how to, look for land and whatnot. So I'm gonna need help for the buying side. And then I was talking to them about selling their house and kind of just walking through them, like, how do they plan on listing it, like blah blah blah. And they were just kind of like, well, we just plan on putting a for sale sign in the yard, and then since we live right on the main road, we'll get people calling us all the time. And I was explaining, I was like, well, do you know anything about like the documents and what, have you talked to an attorney or a real estate agent about, do you know the rundown of that? And if you were to get into a contract with a real estate agent, that's probably going to bring you a buyer. They're like, no, is it okay if you just bring me, can you just go over that paperwork for me? And, can we just like pay you a fee instead of like a commission? And I was just kind of like stumped. I didn't really know what to say. I was just like, I'll just have to get back with my team lead about that, because they, I can tell they're trying to avoid the realtor commission fee, but I didn't really have like a good objection handler for that.
That's a good question.
Yeah, and they're good friends, so like I didn't really like.
Yeah, you don't want to have to sell them on anything, obviously, because you know them and you know them personally. But I mean, in that situation, to me, the first thing that comes to my mind is honesty. And just say, okay, well, are you ready to deal with 11 different contracts that come to you for your house? I'm talking 11 different agents with 11 different 13-page contracts that you need to review and understand each page on, not to mention pre-approvals and agency disclosures. And just say, hey, if you guys are willing to handle that aspect of it, then power to you, but I'm a little busy to just do this for free.
Yeah,
I guess in a way. I mean, you got to be honest with them. Like,
yeah.
guys, that's going to take a lot of my time that I'm going to take away from prospecting, take away from my other clients. I mean,
you're going to run into issues with people peeking in their windows at all hours of the day and night because they just have a for sale sign in their yard. People are going to be peeking in their windows. They're going to get cheap offers because they know you're trying to go cheap because you're not using an agent. So they're going to try to get the best deal they can. You're going to have remedy issues, inspection issues, and all that needs to be taken care of.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I didn't think about just basically explaining the process to them. Okay.
Yeah, help them understand the buying side will be the most difficult right now. And if I'm going to help you try to buy stuff, why not let me try to market your home?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then, yeah, kind of explain the nuisances of also just having a for sale sign in their yard. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have
Also,
a lot. You don't. Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
think Tom because I had this question before as well. And Tom, I thought you told me we are a full service brokerage, not a limited service brokerage. So people can't just pay us to put their listing in the MLS, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
But could they pay you just like a flat fee to handle paperwork?
No, it's still full service. You have to have a full listing agreement. That's
Okay.
limited service, and we're not limited. We're full service.
Okay.
It could pay a flat fee, right? Instead of a percentage.
They can they can pay a flat fee, but it's still full service.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jake, maybe you can just negotiate with them. What are they willing, what's in their budget? What can they afford for you to help them sell their property? And despite still being a full service and doing a full listing agreement, just say, okay, well, maybe I can help you for just XYZ. And we don't have to do it if that's what they're trying to avoid is the 6%, and just indicate to them, make sure you tell them, though, like, hey, listen, if I'm going to help you with this house, I'm giving a buyer's agent half of whatever we talk about. You know what I mean? Like they're going to get 3% no matter what. So,
okay.
I just got to make sure you understand that my expertise and your value to them is worth every penny.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask you a question? So I have buyers that have looked at everything, which as most of you have, they've looked at everything between 250 and 750 on the market. Haven't found anything yet. So I'm sending out letters to potential sellers that asking if they're interested in selling to please reach out to me. And I have a feeling the conversation's going to come up where you want me to sell my house and you want me to pay the commission. So, and I know having the conversation with my buyers about potentially paying commission. But does anybody have any specific scripts that they use for, when someone says we might be interested in selling if you have a buyer, but if you bring us the buyer, we're not going to pay the commission or whatever. Does anybody have any specific scripts that they have or conversations they have in those lines?
I'll go. I know with Mojo, when I'm calling specifically attempting to get leads, I don't even bring that up until it's, contract time, to be honest. In terms of something specific to say, like I was saying to Jake, is I just sell it. You know that you're worth every little penny of that portion that they're going to pay you to sell that property. And then I think sometimes it helps when you tell them exactly what you're going to do. Like, here's what that money is paying for. Here's the advertising. Here's my hours that I'm going to put into it. The multiple deal situation, I'm going to at least have 100 phone calls for this deal. Just between all said and done, between agents, lenders, title.
I guess this would be more of a situation where I already have the buyer and I want them to sell their house to my buyer. Not that I'm going to potentially have my buyers fight other people for this home, I guess.
Okay. That's a good question. So you mean like that first initial conversation about it?
Like I've sent out letters, to all these people. And if you're interested, this is what my buyers are looking for. Your home meets their criteria. Their biggest criteria is they want a private backyard. So I've driven around the Pinnacle, look for all the streets that have a private backyard, sent all them letters. And, if I've had a couple people say, hey, we're not looking to sell, but my neighbor across the street is. And I'm like, okay, sent them a letter as well. I'll follow up with them. But in that situation, they're going to be like, wait, you have a buyer for me and you want me to pay you this much money. So, and I don't want to come across that later. I'm afraid then they'll say, well, forget it. Then we're not doing that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, I saved you all that time. You didn't have to do anything. That's why you owe me the money.
But if they weren't like, well, we weren't planning on selling, but if you have a buyer, then, we'll sell. But I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to, I have a feeling the conversation is going to come up, and I wanted some different.
Well, could you be honest and tell them that the buyer doesn't pay you? If you're like, I have a buyer that wants to buy your house, but I need you to understand how the process works is the buyer doesn't pay me.
I'm sorry. Somebody had something going on in the background. I didn't hear you.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, I was just saying, and I'm just shooting stuff out here at this standpoint, because this is a very unique scenario that I do not envy you that position, but just indicating like I have a buyer, but realize that the buyer doesn't pay me to go get them a house.
Yeah, I mean, I could say that.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
devil's advocate.
Yeah.
What about asking them and your buyer to split it?
Well, yeah, I thought about that as well.
And then if they're selling, then obviously they need to buy, and you could represent them when they need to go buy. So you'd recoup some of your money that way too.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with this. If they're like, well, wait, we're not going to pay you commission if you already have the buyer for us or whatever. So, yeah.
That's tough.
So, Stacey, you haven't been asked that question yet, right? You're just trying to anticipate it?
Just trying to be proactive, yeah. Maybe I won't, but I don't know that it's a pretty, if they buy in the 350, 400 price range, that's a pretty big commission that they would.
Well, I'm kind of I don't want to come off cheesy here, but for me, in a way, is I'm not going to worry about the problem until it's a problem. Almost to a standpoint, like I don't even want to be remotely responsible for creating that issue. I'd like to think anybody that's willing to sell their home understands it's a business. You don't just do it for free.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? So I try to realize, like, you know, Stacey's worth every penny that anybody's going to pay for you to sell the house. And that's my thought to it anyway.
Better, yeah.
What you got, Tom?
Real quick, the buyer can pay it. That's not the problem. The buyer can pay all of it. But the seller's going to establish the asking price, and all you have to do is
I have a 130 maybe.
Put it in the contract.
I'm sorry, I missed that. The seller's going to establish the price and what?
Let's say it's $300,000, and you just take the 300, add your commission to it. That's all. That's the reason you have those buyer agreements. This buyer knows they are paying your fee, so it's either added to the purchase price or they pay for it at closing. But the buyer can pay it. They pay all of it. So it's 100% negotiable, but it's how you structure it. So if you've got somebody that says, I want 300 for the house, but I'm not going to pay you, make it 309 and put it in a contract, the seller pays the commission. It's the same.
Or the buyer pays it. Okay.
But make sure you have that buyer's agreement. Matter of fact, you should have that on everybody you talk to. So there you go.
Thanks.
That is a great example of two different personalities. Bryan, on one hand, is like cool and laid back and is going to like wait for the situations to occur. And Stacey is like, I know that this, and this can happen. And I want to know this up front. And so the beautiful thing about scripts and talking with us and joining these meetings and having these conversations together, all of us working these out, is to learn the proper tools to say when it comes up, So it doesn't matter your personality, cool and laid back, or, you know, like very detail organized. Not that you're not, Bryan, but scripts, don't underestimate them. Like Bryan mentioned, you know, he has them in the back of his head, and they flow out. I'm done. That was a good question, Stacy.
Very good. That's a tough one.
Well, it's 12:05. I don't want to keep anybody any longer. Chris had to jump off. She jumped in a meeting. Is there anything else anyone would like to say or share or ask before we stop?
I have one quick thing.
Oh, Celia, hi.
Hi. Just want to remind everybody, if you didn't see the e-blast, we have a couple of classes coming up on Wednesday next week. Marie's going to be going over the new contract updates again. She did that class, I think, earlier this month. It's not CE, it's just informational, but she does a good job of going through the new changes. So it's great to hop on, and feel free to come with any questions you have. It is very kind of open dialogue. So that's going to be at 1 p.m. on September 2nd via Zoom. And then I have a CE for condo and HOA, since a lot of those changes are condo and HOA specific. That's going to be on the 24th, which is a Thursday of this month, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So that blast hasn't gone out yet, but it will be coming out soon. But if you want to join that one next week, just let me know. I can send you the link to it. Since it's non-CE, you don't really have to register. The link is in your Facebook as well, though. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys. Nice to see everyone.
Can I fill a bucket real quick before everybody runs? I wanted to fill Tom's bucket real quick. And this is for a lot of the newer agents. I was having difficulty with a seasoned agent that was kind of difficult when it comes to a residential property disclosure. And maybe some of you guys have seen this, where they like put X's on it because they were trying to say it's no to everything. And despite me telling her early in the process that wasn't going to work, she just kind of ignored me up until the point where Tom was approving my paperwork saying, hey, this isn't going to work. And I advised Tom, I'm still a little intimidated to go to Tom with a little issue, but Tom's there for us. And he said, well, just ask her who the broker is. So I gave Tom the broker's number, and the same day I got a corrected RPD. So I big shout out to Tom. Thank you, Tom, for helping me with that. But guys, don't be afraid to let Tom know if somebody's giving you a hard time. And this lady was a seasoned agent, and just for whatever reason, just didn't feel like she had to go by the process, I guess. I don't know. But thank you, Tom.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate it. My only comment of the day is no more family fuzzy letters. I don't want to see them. I don't want to hear about them. They've been classified as discriminatory. So
wow.
If you send me one, I will send you back the file and tell you to redo it. No more family fuzzies, okay?
Okay.
All right.
For those of you guys that don't know Tom yet, when you have a problem, call Tom, get straight to the point. If you want to complain, call me or Chris. It's straight to the point with Tom. He's going to deal with it, cut it off. He's busy. He's dealing with a lot of stuff. Just give him the problem. Done. And then call me, and we'll cry together.
And know that if Tom has a problem with your paperwork, he will definitely let you know.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I'll let you know.
Well, okay, just to soften it up a little bit, the division of real estate is working from home, okay? And they are deluged with thousands of calls about this current market. They don't have time to argue about paperwork, and they won't. But if they would call, we're in deep. So that's the reason we have to be really, really careful. But that family fuzzy letter is going to burn somebody, so we are not going to do any more family fuzzy letters. They're just not going to happen. All right, I'm done.
If you were to receive one on your listing, would you just not disregard it, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
You cannot, when you list a house for sale, you really should tell your sellers you will not present those because they have been classified as inflammatory and discriminatory. So to avoid that issue, just ignore it. But you need to tell your sellers up front that you're not going to show those letters to them because that's an expensive mistake. Really expensive mistake. Just don't do it. That's all.
Okay.
Cool. And we have a t-shirt sale coming out soon. Okay, I'll let you guys go.
Bye, y'all.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.